This episode of Church and Main, we look at how effective church communication requires understanding the audience's needs. That's coming up. Hello and welcome to Church and Main, a podcast for people interested in the intersection of faith, politics, and culture. I'm Dennis Sanders, your host. So, in this episode, we're looking at an issue that is near and dear to my heart, and that is church communication. Now, I've been working on church communication issues probably for nearly 20 years now. And a lot has happened in those 20 years. When I kind of first got into this business, that was probably around 2007, maybe. Social media was just starting up. And the way that everyone talked about it, including myself, it was the future. And things have gotten a lot more complicated since 2007. I remember way back when, during those days, everyone was basically saying you had to be on social media. Any church had to be on social media or they just weren't going to survive. That was just a given. But in these days, when I think many of us are less sure of social media, some people even wonder if it's even a good anymore. Everything has changed. I actually know of a church out there that has actually left social media. They still have a church website, but they're not on social media anymore. And that's something that I think 20 years ago, or at least around 2010, would have been considered unheard of. Now, as much as we kind of deal with things like, especially about social media and wondering if that is worth it, and that is, of course, a big part of church communication, I have to also then put on my other hat. And that other hat, of course, is being a pastor. And the thing that I find interesting being the pastor of a congregation is a lot of the people who have become part of our congregation over the last few years did so because they usually saw a church sermon or a live stream of our worship service. We live stream on Facebook and on YouTube. And that's how people have kind of heard about us. And of course, our website as well. But our website, of course, has videos that came from a social media site called YouTube. So for all the problems of social media, and there are many, it seems like it still has a role in the life of the church, at least how churches can communicate their message to people in the world. So today I'm talking with a fellow church communicator about how churches can best communicate in 2025. Josh Linman is a pastor. He is ordained in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and he is also the founder and CEO of the communications firm Common Good Creative. Common Good Creative works with churches and nonprofits, and actually also socially conscious for-profit companies across the United States. Josh has also served as pastor in 3 Lutheran congregations, and that includes Lutheran Church of Hope, which is one of the largest Lutheran churches in the country. He's actually also worked at a lot of different media places, doing church communications in a lot of places, and we'll talk about some of those places that are well known in the church world. Josh lives in Atlanta with his spouse and their, as he likes to call, their human and canine kids. If you're someone that is a church communicator, and you don't have to be a dedicated church communicator, you could just be the pastor of a small church that is basically running the Facebook page, you may want to listen to this conversation. I think it's important of how we communicate, especially in this day and age. So please Join me in this conversation with Josh Linman. Well, Josh, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. I wanted to start off by learning a little bit more about you and your faith journey, and then ultimately about Common Good Creative.
Yeah. Well, so we were finding out a little as we were chatting before that we've
Mm-hmm.
got some mutual kind of backgrounds in the communication space and as pastors and Luther grads and all that. But so I grew up, my dad's a pastor, an ELCA pastor, and um, we moved down to Florida when I was in like fourth grade. I promise this won't take too long. But like that was a huge turning point because instead of just being like the PK that sat in the front row and that was then went back to the parsonage and that was about it. Like we all got involved in this church redevelopment, this struggling church. We moved into a school and we needed somebody to run like the PowerPoint slides. And so that because there was literally no one else, it was me even in fourth grade, like they were like, okay, sure, yeah, you can do it. We need you. Um, and so being a PK, everybody's like, oh, you'd be a great pastor. I was talking with somebody the other day and I was like, I don't think they said that to my sister, which is interesting, kind of sexist, but for me, they were like, oh yeah, great pastor. And I did not want anything to do with that because I mean, it's a hard life. And there was just a lot to it and it was very demanding. And, especially launching something new. Uh, but I still want to do something in ministry. I got more and more involved from clicking the PowerPoint slides to like designing the slides and uh, creating graphics for sermon series. And then we moved into a bowling alley and renovated that because there was just no other space in East Orlando. It was so expensive. And so finally, when we moved there, like I got to kind of be involved with some of the install of the tech stuff and so see all this brand new equipment. And it was really fun to kind of get into that production side of things. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. Like that's adjacent to kind of what the pastor thing. I'll still get to work in the church, which had become so important to me and to actually being able to speak in a language I felt like people used when it comes to like digital media instead of kind of the boring traditional kind of church setting where we're stuck just as if like the printing press is the new thing and that's about it. I mean, maybe it's like a radio thing or something, I don't, whatever it is. Like churches just do not projection and all of that. I know with COVID, we've kind of been pushed into some of that space, which is one beautiful side of a terrible thing. But I was really inspired to, and I wrote this vision for our media ministry at our church, and I was following Ginghamsburg Church and their like media ministry, which they were some of the pioneers, Len Wilson and Jason Moore and Mike Slaughter up there, and so so I decided I'll go to school, went to Florida State, studied media production, and wanted to work in a church doing video production, that kind of thing. And so got that opportunity, actually went to Ginghamsburg and was an intern
Mm-hmm.
there, and then got a job at a church in Kansas City at the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection. So
Hmm. Yeah,
big
yeah,
church. And
yeah.
I was like very focused on just production for our contemporary worship service at the time on like Saturday, Sunday night. Um, but we got to the point where I had been to Africa a few times with my dad's church to Burundi, this very forgotten small country in the heart of Africa, and just like the dissonance between super nice, super rich Johnson County, Kansas, and very wealthy United Methodist Church of the Resurrection. Great people. Adam Hamilton, awesome. Their vision, what they do to help the community, all that's great. But like I was in just the production side of things, doing. I mean, it's a multi-million dollars. I'm sure they were spending on all of their equipment, all of their staff for just production of the worship services. And I just something wasn't like connecting for me there. And so, I read the book, The Whole Inner Gospel by Rich Stearns, who at the time was the World Vision, I think, CEO. Um, and that really kind of like this idea that we talk a lot about getting people to heaven, but what about bringing heaven to earth?
Hmm.
And that, was a big turning point, I think, in my life and my faith. And so I wanted to kind of find a way to live out more of that bringing heaven to earth side of things. Um, and so I was either going to become a communications director for an NGO and like go live in Africa someplace, or I was going to become a pastor. I guess those were my two kind of options. And I was seriously exploring the NGO thing. I talked to a guy who was in Syria at the time. This was back in like 2010 or so. And he was talking me through it and kind of the be a crazy life. But my sister was like, Josh, you you would never last like more than a week in like a developing country where you just are, you're a city boy. You like your suburban conveniences and like it wouldn't work. So I was like, okay, that's probably true. And so ended up at seminary and yeah, did that for a while. And this, you asked about my faith journey, though, which, I mean, this is all kind of tied up together.
It's all
One of
tied
the
up
interesting
together. Yep.
things I have learned in this whole so that like change was a huge, um, it shook me quite a bit when I decided to step away from what I had, for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, at least at that time, thought was kind of the path for my life. And then to go to seminary, it seemed like like basically I was leaving everything behind of my past life. And I was like, why would God lead me down this way? I thought I was being faithful, but then I'm doing something else. And so it's kind of like a waste of time. And I, of course, come to see that there was nothing wasted in that time. And even now, as I make kind of another U-turn post-COVID, our son was born somewhat prematurely and had some struggles trying to launch a church in COVID. So stepped away from the pastor thing, went on leave, but needed some kind of income. And so I said, okay, if I do the I know the communication side of things. I know churches. So how can I merge those two together in some way? And that's how Common Good Creative was born, and that's continues to be for the last 3 years now. That's what I've been doing. So a lot of flexibility, but we just hired on our first full-time staff person beyond me, and have a number of contractors work with a number of churches around the country doing communication, social media work, and so again, like it's been interesting. All of those like turns in the process, you look back and you can see, oh, okay, so maybe it wasn't that God wasn't there, that I was making mistakes along the way, but it's that God was preparing me for something else, and using all of it kind of to compound together into where I'm at now. And so, and and it wouldn't be the same without any of those stages in my life. And so it's been a very interesting, and that's a very long um, conversation about that. But yeah, so
Okay. And I think one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because I wanted to have you on, is when I saw your article, and it was really about kind of trying to connect people. You brought in some of the information from the most recent Surgeon General about loneliness, and
yes,
kind of talking a little bit about how churches present themselves. I mean, you can use the word marketing, but I always feel weird using it, but on social media, but on a website. And, you had, I think, an interesting example about, a church potluck and how would you present that.
yeah, yeah,
Can
yeah.
you kind of go a little bit more about how are churches sometimes presenting themselves on social media and other places, and how do you connect that to kind of what you're seeing in society, of that sense of people longing for connection?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the church. we have this hunger to have everybody. I mean, these are all of our clients. God bless them. They're wonderful people. And I know every church out there wants more people to engage with their ministry, and they're doing incredible things. And they're like, why don't people come? Or, let's just tell them about all the things we're doing. And okay, that'll be great. But I think there's a disconnect there between, what people are longing for and what they desire, and sometimes it's not too far of a gap between the two things and what the church is doing, but just something to be able to translate what the church is doing and talk about it in such a way that um, it resonates with the hopes, dreams, challenges, desires of folks out there. And I think we've kind of you used to just be able to communicate what was going on because people would come because that's just what people did. And so,
Hmm.
had this newsletter, nice print newsletter full of lots of text and nothing else. And it was just, all the activities at the church. And, you could just put that out and your members would come and, maybe they'd invite some new people every once in a while. But it wasn't as much a necessity to kind of be reaching out, and the expectation just was kind of that, okay, you knew you could turn here for X, Y, and Z. But obviously, as society has kind of gotten more and more disconnected from church as kind of this central place in community life, it's not as easy to do that anymore. And so one thing that struck me with this, it was Vivek Murthy's, the former Surgeon General's, like parting prescription, I think he said, for America as he was getting ready to leave office. He said, there's kind of this great need for um, finding a remedy for pain and disconnection, and he said that these were the things that were going to do it: relationships, service, and purpose. And when I read those, I'm like, wait, hold on. Relationships like community of some kind, service making a difference, and purpose like some kind of spiritual grounding, some kind of understanding that like there is this world out that you're not just kind of aimlessly wandering through life. Like there is something grounding all of us, something connecting us, rooting us together in some way. Like, oh, that sounds like something we talk about at the church all the time. Um, and yet, for some reason, people aren't coming, they're not showing up. So what if our challenge wasn't as much to change what we're doing as to change how we talk about what we're doing? Now, I will say, I think there's a lot of churches that need to change a lot of what they do. I just think, you can't continue to operate exactly how you have. There's a lot of churches who are very much, they are disciples of like the way that they worship instead of disciples of Jesus. The Lutheran Church especially does a great job of this. We do a great job of making disciples of the way that we worship, because, that, oh goodness, we're going to take out the Lamb of God or something like that or take out the creed. Oh, but that's not Lutheran worship anymore. And it's like, okay, whatever. Anyways, that's kind of a soapbox of mine. We need to make disciples of Jesus. And this is what Jesus was all about. These were his three great loves, relationships, in together, service, going out into the community, and then this upward relationship with his heavenly Father that gave him the purpose to be the one who went out and did all these things. So, yeah. So I mean, so this is kind of the idea, and somebody that is kind of a maybe surprising source of my thinking on this has come from Donald Miller. I don't know if you remember him from a way back. I don't know, like the early 2000s, maybe. He wrote Blue Like Jazz,
Hmm.
and he's become kind of he's become this like coach, communicator. He has all these kind of like business made simple and marketing. I don't know if it's called marketing made simple or anyways, and now he's got coaching made simple. He's found his niche and makes plenty of money doing that. But the thing that I appreciated from what he said, and it's really nothing new, it's just talking about things in terms of story. And so you're helping to see people, you're helping to kind of point out the conflict, like look at kind of that great story arc narrative that so many movies and great books and epic, things from back in the past. There's a conflict, there's a character, there's some kind of conflict that changes everything. There's a journey that people go on, and then there's some kind of resolution. And so to try to situate your marketing, your communication in those terms, story brand, I think is the name of kind of the concept he has around this idea. Uh, but it's all about helping to like very clearly say, here's kind of the conflict, here's the challenge, here's the goal, the dream, and speak to that. And this is from like the character, which for our sense, it'd be like the people outside of the church. We're trying to communicate to them. And so we're trying to communicate to their needs and dreams and desires instead of just saying, hey, in the example I used, like there's I think it was Lenten soup and supper, on Wednesday nights. Um, Instead of saying that, like say, hey, because we know people are longing for community and connection. Maybe also people are longing for some way to simplify their crazy busy schedules. Maybe you could talk about this Lenten soup and supper as like, hey, are you looking for an opportunity to make some connections, to have a quick and easy meal in the middle of a busy week? We'd love for you to join us for this thing. And so that just, I mean, just in that little simple change of phrasing, I think uh, it has a great potential to captivate someone in a different way than if you're just going to kind of be I think you might have said like bulletin board of, all social media is kind of the bulletin board of all the activities that the church is doing to just kind of throw here's, the Easter egg hunt. And then there's this event that we've got and an ice cream social and this and that. And just, spewing all this information out at people. But instead kind of maybe still talking about those things, definitely still talking about those things, but talking about it in terms of, those three great desires for relationship, service, and purpose. Yeah.
One of the things I've been thinking about a lot, especially lately, and I remember when things like Facebook first came out, um, and how much I think churches really wanted to get on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how things have changed, especially I would say over the last 5 years, but from maybe where it was 10 or 15 years ago. Um, Especially if you're trying to link to things. So if I'm saying, here's this event, but linking to our church website, that doesn't, especially in the way that algorithms work now, doesn't work as much.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a lot of what you're having to do is kind of the thing about telling stories, telling things that maybe grab people in a way, in some ways now suited to that. And, that as much as I sometimes get a little annoyed by the memification of social media, that maybe memes are a way of reaching out in some way and reaching out in this way that you're talking about.
Mm. Yeah. 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 I think, yes, definitely. All these social platforms have their things that they want original content from you so that, I mean, this we know is, I think I've been reading a lot about LinkedIn and how they definitely, instead of just linking to your blog post, like they want something on their site. And so, yeah, I mean, what does it look like to kind of make some of those things work in that way? And obviously, I think AI can be a great thought partner in that. I think there's all sorts of things you need to think about when it comes to AI and like the detriment that it or the weight that it puts on like infrastructure and water use and all these kind of things. Like I think that has kind of changed a little bit about my initial super excitement about AI. Uh, but I mean, you take your sermon and put the text into some kind of GPT, and there are ones that are more um, like copyright protected, so that you can just kind of use them internally with your content only. They won't take outside ideas. And so I'm trying to think of one of them that I've heard of recently. But and then just ask it, hey, could you think of some discussion questions, from this? And then those could be things that you post as kind of more original content, but it's something you've already created. We do a lot of sermon clips, which I know this takes a little bit more effort, but you're as pastor, you're already working so hard on this sermon, and oftentimes now everybody's recording, everybody's doing some kind of live streaming. You've at least got some of those capabilities, and so why not try to find some ways to expand the sermon and your audience by taking some, 30, 45, 50, 90-second clips from your sermon and posting those on social media as a way to kind of get some engagement. And like in today's day and age, especially when like YouTube is continuing to try to battle with like TikTok to get more people engaged, we've seen great results from some churches just posting on YouTube Shorts, and it gets, I mean, 1,000, 1,500 views, whereas content on Facebook might get, a couple hundred if we're lucky, with some of those things. So it's an interesting time to kind of be uh, thinking through, what platforms you want to use. And obviously, I know all of this. It takes time. It takes some knowledge of these things. It takes the kind of just creativity that I think often can be hard when you're in the grind of the weekly church world and monster. And so, I get that, and I'm not saying any of this is easy. There are definitely folks out there that do this kind of thing. Like Common Good Creative, or like many others, and some of them like just specifically for like sermon clips and those kind of things. You just upload your video or send them the YouTube link, and then they'll grab those things. And for, I mean, relatively like under $100 a month, some of these places do things like that. And so an interesting way to kind of get some more traction out of what you're doing already. Um, but yeah. Anyway, so I kind of answered some of your
Yeah, no, I
question,
think
but
you did because I one of the things that I do both in my my own preaching, but also for the church that I work with outside of church,
Mhm.
is I actually do make sermon clips,
Mm.
um, and those do get some traction. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
I think you have to kind of, at least for me, I'm great at getting the quote, but it's then how do you frame it in a way that will grab people's attention. Um,
Yeah, right, right,
and
right.
so,
And often, I mean, you kind of got to lower yourself to the clickbait kind of, titles to get that traction, which is, it's a double-edged sword, I think sometimes, but but I think it's so important for progressive churches, for mainline churches to be, I mean, evangelical churches, non-denominational churches are using this kind of stuff, and they are everywhere on social and on YouTube and TikTok. And so like we've got to, and with theology that sometimes is okay and sometimes I'll just say is maybe less than stellar, and sometimes toxic, if we're honest. And so,
I was trying to be more current and say sus, but yeah.
oh yeah, there you go. Right. I know. I have a 3.5-year-old, so I'm not in student ministry anymore. So I'm not as cool as I like to at least pretend I used to be.
I never
Uh,
was,
but
but yeah.
um, yeah, right. So, but yeah. So being a progressive voice in those platforms, so important. And I'm thankful for the ones that are there, that are speaking out, that are kind of sharing a different kind of view. But I, there's there's room for more. So
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
one of the things you also bring up in the article is maybe moving away as much from the digital realm into the actual
Mm,
physical realm is how churches welcome visitors. Um,
mm,
and you had an interesting thing of being when you were living in the cities at Luther, of visiting several Lutheran congregations, several big Lutheran congregations, and not really connecting with people. But then you went to a kind of a church plant
Mhm.
here in the cities, which is actually well known, Mill City Church,
Oh,
and
okay.
that
Yeah,
you did
yeah.
connect. Could you kind of speak a little bit more about that, and what did you learn from that experience, and what can churches learn from that experience?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So we're thinking, those three great needs of relationship, service, purpose. So on that relationship side of things, when I was now. I was very particular about the kind of church that I was going to go to because, my growing up with my dad's church, I was not going to be in a place that was just organ and kind of robe and all those things. It just wasn't, it works for some people. It wasn't going to work for me. And so I was looking for particular things and went to a lot of well-known Lutheran and non-Lutheran churches that were that had bands, or there was preaching in series, they were doing some different things, and yeah, it was so fascinating that all of them. And now I'm a very like quiet, reserved person when I don't have to be like in front of people, and so like, and I was going by myself at the time, and so I just like kind of would sneak in to these churches, and then I was able to just, and I would get a hi there from somebody like passing out a bulletin, but that was about it. And then, in the service, it's very, some of them would do some kind of like pass the peace, but even then, like that's just kind of a very transactional thing at most. And then I'd be able to slip right back out and nobody would stop, nobody would say anything. And if this is, and I know this is a challenge. This was a challenge that uh, back in the early 2000s in my dad's church, we tried to, my dad instituted this like take 5 minutes to talk to someone you don't know before you're talking to somebody that you do after the service, because it's always been a challenge. Like, I mean, this is one of the reasons why the people that are coming to our churches are coming to our churches, because they found some kind of community, some kind of connection, some kind of relationship. But I think the challenge for the church becomes, how do we keep that from just being this like cliquish country club kind of thing where it's just kind of for insiders and we're not doing anything for outsiders? And also obviously have to do it in such a way that you don't like freak out the new people that come, because I would not want to like have somebody be like, "Oh, stand up and let's greet this new person." Like, "Oh, please don't do that ever, anyone." Or have like 50 people at the end like rush towards me and do this thing. But what I loved, what Mill City did, is they had a time, and I don't know if they still do this, but I connected with them on multiple levels. They were a church plant, okay, just like my church growing up. They met in a school, okay, just like my church growing up. They had a band. It was just very kind of informal, laid back, great community. And but right before the sermon, I think they had this time where like there were some questions that they put up on the screen, and you just had a chance to like mingle with some people around you and answer these questions. And I know it can seem like that might seem like not what something an introvert wants to do, but it gives you at least some structure so that you're not just like shooting the breeze and like talking about something and you're like, oh, I don't know what to talk about next. And so like, and they were easy questions, and sometimes they had some connection to the sermon, sometimes not. Um, but I remember the first time that I went there, uh, they had those questions. I answered them with the people around me, and then like they kept the conversation going afterwards. And some of those people actually became some of the people in the city group that I started attending because of that. But I never looked back and never went anyplace else after that experience there.
Hmm.
Uh, so it was just very intentional, about finding those ways. And I often, in my own preaching, would put those questions in then at some point in the service, and always with the disclaimer that I'm sorry, introverts, you might not appreciate this, but you might come to thank me at some point. So yeah, just that, and that intentionality, I think, is just so helpful, and give people the opportunity to be seen in a lighthearted, fun way. Um, and yeah, just the opportunity to make a connection in some way. that then can go on, besides weather, this and that, and also kind of just hopefully trains your people a little bit that you're looking for some folks to talk to and those questions too. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Wonderful.
Kind of going back to some of the stuff that's online, one of the questions, especially I think about this because the church that I'm at is a small church. So I'm usually one that does most of the social media stuff and all that. And of course, I have some background to do that.
Yeah.
But, and that's the case, I think, more and more with a lot of pastors is that they are
Mm.
in small churches. They don't necessarily have, you know, staff that's dedicated on that. What advice would you give them to try to do some of this stuff? When, it's basically on a shoestring budget.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think Canva is a great place to start. If
Mm,
if you're willing to kind of just well to get super practical, like that's a great place to start because they've got a bunch of beautiful templates that you can use, and it's the team version of that is free for with access to all of their clip art and all their videos and all their stock stuff is free for churches if you can figure out kind of the application process is a little annoying, but still worth it because you're getting free access. And then with your team, you could invite other people from the congregation to help and really kind of foolproofs a lot of kind of the design, gives you some great, there's templates for everything. And so you can look through and just find something that kind of strikes your fancy, looks good, and you can go ahead and use something like that. And we've got some nice integrations to be able to just publish right to social media, and so, definitely makes it easier. Now it's still, it's still work. Um, but that I think is a helpful thing when we talked about with AI when it comes to um, using that as kind of a thought partner. Help, here are the three events that I've got coming up. Could you help me think about how to talk about these in an engaging way? You could even say, that speak to one of these three things that we know are super important for people, and it will spit something out. Whatever you think of that. I mean, I think there's the savings of time when it comes to, we know that as a and I've worked in churches where I'm like a pastor that oversees some staff people and I've got everybody to do all the other things, and I've worked as a church planter where it was me to do everything. And so I mean I get it that there's a lot to do, and even like adding one more thing can just seem so overwhelming and taxing, and just like the creativity especially I think required with some of this just makes it hard. And so inviting someone else in, even if that someone is an AI tool, I think there's something to be said for that. And so those are probably two things. There's a whole bunch of also services out there that you can even not doing like big custom stuff, but they've got libraries of information of graphics for series, for seasons, for different events in the church. And so those are just kind of some nice opportunities that you've got some things kind of already designed. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I'm of
I
course.
think I was just
No,
going to
no, go
ask
ahead. Yeah.
because you kind of have highlighted this a few times is what role does AI have in communications? Because I think it does
Mhm.
have a kind of a more and more of a role. Um, I still personally need to try to know how to figure out Chat GPT. I'm a little behind on that, but I
Right.
do
Yeah.
use it at times for things like images, um,
Mm,
and
mm.
things to that extent. But what is the role of AI? How can AI help um, in communicating with people, um, and in kind of getting the message out?
Right. Yeah. I appreciate. I don't know if you've tried this, but I was very interested. Like back in the day, this was a couple of years ago when like this was first coming out. I was like, ooh, I wonder what kind of sermon this thing can write. And so I was like, tell me, we were in like the church year of, was it Lent or pick like a very specific thing. And we're celebrating baptism. So tie in a baptism and this scripture passage and, talk about, X, Y, and Z. And oh no, I just asked it to like explain the church calendar, like the seasons of the church and like why that matters. And I was kind of blown away by when I was like, oh, I mean, it's kind of a little bland, but honestly, like it got a lot of the like main points right.
Hmm.
And so, to be a thought partner or like a conversation starter so that you know that you've got to write a newsletter article about, maybe it is about going into Pentecost and want to talk about churches in general, or we're in Advent, we started the church calendar and you want to talk about that. Oh gosh, but like where do I start? And there's so many things. And we know all of this out in our heads, but so that just I think using that as kind of a launch board to get started or help me think of some ideas for a fun name for this kids event that we're having. Or, like you said, I saw somebody the other day that like turned their pictures into like coloring pages for their kids, like family photos. But I mean, you could do that with church stuff too. Like here's a picture of the church building, or inside with communion set or something. And that was always an annoying thing when I was trying to figure out activities for kids. Like coloring things are good, but like it's just dumb pictures that you can find. And so like, whoa, here's the thing, and it can turn it into it for, something like customize my church, but
Hmm.
for free. And again, like I know there's, I think some environmental and some, well, yeah, I'd say it's mostly environmental. Like uh, certainly there's also the like theoretical philosophical challenges of AI with how much thinking are we doing? How much are we letting this kind of like dilute maybe the unique perspective that I have or that I could bring or that, you could bring. Um, so I think there's those things to think about too, but at the same time, why not leverage it for I'm sure somebody said that about the printing press too.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Well, if people want to know more about you or even contact Common Good, where
Yeah.
should they
Yeah.
go? And are there any other places that they should be looking at for if they're kind of doing this on their own that they should go to?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So one thing I was going to mention now, this is one of my clients. But I also this is my first client, and I'm very appreciative to them and the work that they do. So Church Anew, which is where the blog post that I wrote was based on. They've got a blog, but they also have a bunch of great church resources,
Hmm.
and a lot of it we call them to-go resources. So they're all kind of bundled together. It's sermon prompts, it's graphics, and we create the graphics for worship, and also then we give you social media ideas to go along with like the whole series. And some of them are series, some of them are lectionary based uh, CYF resources. So it's kind of a you can use whatever you want of it, don't have to use it all, but a great resource. For some of those. Now it's very limited. We've only been doing this, you do like Lent and Advent, and we've got a few summer things, some stewardship ones, but it's not going to cover the whole of the church year. We are actually just in my employee Kyle and I are talking about doing something like that and offering some kind of social media package that offers all those different kind of church calendar year, because I think especially in the kind of Lutheran or the mainline circles, lectionary based circles, like not as used to some of those things. Or we don't need like super bloody crosses for Lent or some, I don't know, but like some evangelical churches like to do. But yeah, so that's a great resource. I love Pro Church Tools, and Brady Shearer does a lot of great stuff. And there's just more like kind of good thought ideas. And some of them are very practical when it comes to like getting some good pictures of and here's some settings, even for your iPhone, just to capture some quality photos and video that you could then put on your website or use in social media. He's just got a bunch of great creative tips like that, and often with like small churches in mind. Um, they also talk about some, big things that are kind of crazy and expensive and whatnot. But then, yeah, commongoodcreative.org. Would love to connect with anybody. You search on social media and Instagram, Facebook, I think you'd be able to find me too, Josh Linman. I think I'm the only one. I don't know. But yeah, so and we are very excited. We've got churches of all sizes that we work with, and some we just do like social stuff. Some we help with their entire communications, and do it on kind of a fractional and on a scale basis, depending on how much they need. So we've got kind of different packages for that, because we understand that you want high quality communication, but often don't have the ability to pay a full-time person for that, or even like a 20-hour week person for that, and it's hard to find those folks. So we wanted to step in there and help out. So yeah, be happy to talk further.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. Hopefully we can
Yeah,
talk a little bit more sometime in the future.
for sure. Would love to connect, and yeah, excited about what you're doing here, and yeah, best of luck to you.
All right.
All right.
So I want to thank Josh for taking the time to chat with me. I hope that this was a helpful episode for those of you who deal with communications in the local congregation. If you have thoughts that you'd like to share, feel free to do so. You can send me an email at churchandmain@substack.com, and I put that you can find that email in the show notes. Um, I will also include links to an article he wrote for Church and New. That's actually how he got on the podcast, and then also links to Common Good Creative, his firm. If you want to learn more about this podcast, listen to past episodes, or donate, go to churchandmain.org. If you'd like to read articles that are related to some of what I've written, or just even what's going on in the world today, check out my Substack. That's churchandmain.substack.com to read related articles. The latest one that I have up there is actually a repeat. It's something I wrote way back in 2018 on my WordPress site, and it's called "No, It's Not Going to Get Better." It's kind of the role of lament in society. And the funny thing is how much things have not changed since I wrote that article some 7 years ago. And it's an interesting take. It starts off with my watching a clip of the 1983 made-for-TV movie The Day After, and basically how that interfered with my sleeping schedule for probably the next week or so. But it's hopefully give it a read, and there are other articles that are available for you to look at there as well. Also, as I said, feel free to make a donation. There is our links in the show notes. And then also consider joining our email list. Speaking of social media, I don't promote as much on social media as I used to, just because it just hasn't really been in the cards as much. People don't look as much for podcasts via social media. But I do have a social media page, and there is a link, and I would love to have you join that. That would be great. But if you'd like to have the article show up right away, join my email list, and the link again is in the show notes. One programming note to be aware of is that the August schedule is going to be a little bit interesting. Mid-August, I will probably be on vacation, so especially the week of, these are usually coming out on Friday. So I think it's the week of the 14th, 15th. So that one might be coming out earlier. And then I'm pretty sure that following 2 weeks, I decided I will not be posting new episodes just to take a break, and then get back into it in September. Um, so I might actually be doubling up on some episodes in the next few weeks, just to let you know, um, or not. We'll see. But just to let you know, the August schedule will be a little bit different. And I know I've been sometimes saying in the past that things are changing and then they don't. But I do think that this time, I do want to try to be intentional about taking kind of a mini Sabbath from the podcast. So kind of the last 2 weeks in August, there won't be any new episodes, and then we'll get right back at it after Labor Day. So just to let you know about that. Um, One final thing is to remember to rate and review this episode. You can do that on your favorite podcast app. I also hope that you consider subscribing to this podcast on your favorite podcast app. When you do that, when you rate a review, that does actually help people find Church and Main a lot easier. So I do hope that you will consider doing that. And then finally, pass this along to people that you know, family, friends who might be interested. So that is it for this episode of Church and Main. I'm Dennis Sanders, your host. As I always like to say, thank you so much for listening. Take care, everyone. Godspeed, and I will see you very soon.